Hello, everyone. My name is still Kari Fasting, and I will tell you a little bit about WSI as an introduction to this webinar. WSI Women's Sport International was formed in 1994, so we are celebrating a 30-year jubilee to meet the challenge of ensuring that sport and physical activity receive the attention and priority they deserve in the lives of women and girls. The main purpose of WSI is to serve as an umbrella organization that can bring about positive change for girls and women. And very important for us, our advocacy is strongly based on knowledge, meaning based on current research. WSI is one of two sports organizations that have consultative status at the UN because we are having this status at the UN Economic and Social Council. We also work with many other partners, and we work with UNESCO. And we have had, over the last 15 years, every year at the Committee of the Status of Women in UN, they are meeting in New York, which normally is in March, we have had a seminar. If you have not joined us before, I will urge you to go into our webpage and sign up for membership. We are a voluntary organization, a non-governmental organization, so the only income almost we have is from membership. Then it is a pleasure for me to introduce the speaker of today, who works at the same institution where I have been for many, many years. And Dr. Hanne Elisabeth Sogn works as a researcher at the Department of Sport and Social Sciences. Her main area of research is sports sociology, rooted in feminist theory, and focusing on power and structure and leadership process in sport organizations. She finished her PhD in 2022 about top leaders in sport, and the methodology she used was qualitatively. She is, in this thesis, is inspired by Dorothy Smith's research methodology, institutional ethnography. Institutional ethnography is designed how ruling relations organize and coordinate people's everyday lives, and how people in a given context contribute to produce and reproduce power and ruling through their own practice and activity. So I thereby give the floor to Elisabeth, and if you have we have time for questions afterwards, but it would be good if you have questions already when she talks, that you put them in the questions area of this. So Hanne, over to you.
Thank you, Kari, and hi everyone. As Kari said, I'm Hanne, and I work as a researcher here at the School of Sports Science in Norway. And back in 22-23, I published a doctoral thesis with the title, as maybe Kari mentioned, The Rules of the Game, an institutional ethnographic study on gender, power and governance in the Norwegian sports organization. And my overall goal with this work was to explore the male dominance at the top leader level, because this still was a challenge then and still are. I will come back to that. And I also will come back to what I discovered, but start by saying that the title of this presentation maybe are a bit pretentious and also a bit ambitious, rethinking how to change the power structures in sports organization is a big demand. And there have been done a lot of work, both by researchers and practitioners, to challenge the fact that men are the most powerful in sport, as in the society as such. It is a big challenge to change this, and also to get enough support to put the problem on the agenda. Despite the fact that for many sports organizations today, the goal is to ensure a better gender balance among athletes in different sports, but also among leaders and high-performing coaches. The problem that I set out to explore back in 2018, gender balance in sport, still are a problem we have to problematize. And as the former president of the Norwegian Olympic and Paralympic Committee and Confederation of Sport said a few years ago, the situation in sport when it comes to gender balance at the top leader level is unacceptable. Since then, there have been some changes in Norwegian sport. Today, 50% of those who are elected top leaders in the regional sports confederations in Norway are women. But as history has shown, these go back and forth. Therefore, to problematize this, the power structures in sport still is important, also in Norway. So to the agenda of today. As an introduction, I will provide you with some background information about the project, how it was designed, and as an important part of this, how I came to conceptualize the term masculinity. After introducing you for this, or to all this, I will go into some of the results before finally talking about the conclusions and the implications of my work. As I said, the sports organization in Norway has for many years been concerned with gender balance and gender equality. At the same time, the Norwegian sports organizations faces a major challenge when it comes to the top leader level in the organization. When I started my work with the dissertation, approximately 80% of all top leaders were men. Why this was so was the problem I set out to explore. And when I'm talking about top leaders in Norwegian sport, it is important to say that I talk about those who are presidents and secretary generals in sports federations, and also administrative and elected top leaders in the regional sports confederations. Early on, when I was designing the project, I decided to use institutional ethnography to approach the aforementioned problem. IE is a methodology of inquiry designed to explore, unpack, and challenge the social organization of everyday life, where the social is understood as people's coordinated activities. IE is a methodology in the sense that Smith's ontology gives guidance to how to approach a social field, which involves starting in people's doings and sayings and in text. From this point of departure, the main goal is to discover and unpack how power works, what Smith calls relations of ruling. I started my exploration by interviewing 4 relatively new appointed female top leaders. When I asked them about their experience as to how it felt to be a top leader in an organization dominated by men, I got a bit surprised. by their answers. To give you one example, as one administrative top leader said, I just think that we women have to work a little harder and do a little more. Once you have the opportunity, you have to do a good job. Convince those around you, men, that you can. You must deserve that respect. It shouldn't be any easier for girls. I interpreted what these women said as they had accepted a way of doing leadership that had strong connotations to something masculine. They all pointed out the fact that to be a top leader, they had to be strong and tough and sensitive, have sharp elbows, be offensive, be active, have balls, show muscles, and take chances. From this point of in the project, I decided to do two things. First, I decided to interview more men than women, and I will come back to why this became important for the project. And second, I needed to develop a theoretical framework that could catch these doings and sayings. And before I go into that, to the results, I will reflect on the theoretical framework that I used. Because of my findings, I chose to disconnect the term masculinity from men's bodies and formulate it as a logic of ruling, which refers to that there are characteristic forms of ruling or governing in the Norwegian sports organization, which regulates and give direction to what top leaders do, which shapes work, identities, perceptions of reality, social interaction, and institutional practices and ways of thinking and being. In other words, I did not understand masculinity or do understand masculinity as an intentional and willful project done by men, but as the rules of the game, which we all, regardless of gender, takes part in and reproduce. In essence, it refers to institutional practices and ways of thinking and being that we are coordinating across time and space. Because it has traditionally been men who have been confronted with the demands to do masculinity, and because gender issues in sports organizations seen from men's perspectives is less explored, I choose to interview more men than women. Totally, I interviewed 26 men and 12 women. I also did an extensive fieldwork by being present at a large number of meetings and events initiated by the sports organizations. I also read and analyzed a large number of institutional texts. So to the results. All in all, when I asked the men primarily about how a typical week at work for these leaders looked like, they described it as follows. It was chronically hectic, crisis-oriented. It was difficult to plan. They had to be available 24/7. They had hectic meeting activities, including evenings, weekends, and holidays. And there was also demanding travel activity. According to Acker, work is generally organized on the model of the unencumbered white man, and both women and men are expected to perform according to this model. What I discovered is nothing new then, but something the sports organizations and its top leaders not seem to be much aware of. I also asked questions that could help shed light on how the top leaders experience the culture in the organization. And the overall impression was that the top leaders had to manage a lot of conflicts and competitiveness in the everyday life in the organization. What I discovered was a kind of institutional mistrust, where competition and winning or standing at the top of the podium seemed crucially important. And this way of being a top leader seemingly was linked to several factors. There are fundamentally disagreement about the organization's purpose and scope. There are power struggles between the sports federations and the regional sports confederations. There is a struggle over money, status, and visibility between the small and medium-sized and large sports federations. And there is conflict and power struggles between the administrative top leaders and the politically elected leaders. At the same time, a strong outward loyalty seemed to be required. The narrative to the top leaders retold may to some extent seem to be about avoiding disruption. Some of the leaders linked this to the success the sports organization has and have had. The organization has to preserve its image. Mark Meyer asserts that organizations characterized by a masculine organizational ethos often are characterized by desire to avoid disturbance and to maintain universal standards. This in contrast to organizations characterized by an androgyn ethos, where differences are valued and encouraged. In connection with the observation that I did, I became aware that the president that I told you earlier about in NIF constantly stated that the organization had a goal to become a world-class sports organization, which included being more equal, more diverse, and more sustainable. And during the time studying the organization, in the organization, a lot happened. There was carried out a major modernization project, and the board of NIF also set several other goals. Goal connected to pronounce or to be a more social responsible. I observed that this did not happen in a vacuum. At the time and before, there was a great deal of pressure from the sports organization stakeholders, both from the states, sponsors, and media, about demand of renewal. Demands that came on top of an already demanding workload for these leaders. All in all, this is a positive development. Sports are a value-based activity. At the same time, given what the top leaders told me, I warned in this context that expansion like this will be followed by some unintended consequences. As one female top leader said, I'm afraid that being a top leader in Norwegian sport is so all-consuming that it is impossible to keep the head above the water. So, to the conclusion and the implications. What I think I discovered during working with these issues was that this way of doing organizational life that the top leaders talked about is that it's based on an equality ideology that primarily enables women and also men to compete on what previously were white middle-class men's premises. The optimal top leader in sport is still an unencumbered man with a ground crew at home. And as Acker also pointed out many years ago, and considering the third shift, which is still taken care of by women, the demands associated with being a top leader in sport still are something that men mainly will be able to fulfill. But there is also something more in my data that we need to consider. And that was that all the top leaders, regardless of gender, did masculinity in some way or another. They all help to reproduce power structures that undermine the feminine. So what we are talking about here is a way of doing leadership and organizational life that contribute to reinforce what I have chosen to conceptualize as a masculine logic of ruling. As I said in the beginning, women too take part in the rules of the game. I therefore conclude with that bringing in more female other bodies will not in itself solve the structural and cultural problems the sports organizations are facing. Some will say that a critical mass of women will change the organization. I think that it's like saying that there will not be any war if women rule the world. This is a simplified conclusion and also an essentialistic one. Like there are no men that want to change how the world looks like. I think therefore to make sports organization more equal, more diverse and sustainable, we need to broaden our perspectives. It's not about gender, it's about raising questions about a system and a culture shaped in the past. The answer to this, of course, complex, and what I discovered are narratives about being top leaders in sports that are known. At the same time, I think that we rethink how to change these power structures, we need to go back, all the way back to what are the goal of sport? Is it being higher, stronger, faster, or is it doing good? All sports organizations have the goal of being more inclusive, as I said, diverse and sustainable. And as also Olympism are linked to certain values. Olympism was initially understood as a philosophy of social reform. In its pure form, it's about making the world a better place. So what happened then? In my mind, there is someone or something that has colonized Coubertin's vision. It's neoliberalism, it's capitalism, it's individualism, and it's egoism. A logic founded in an ethic that emphasizes separation and individuation of self from others. Maybe this is naive, and it's not about using sport to bolster political causes, but to implement values that is already there. Making sports organizations more equal, inclusive, and sustainable is not possible, I think, without reinterpreting the ideals of sport or to reread the Bible. So then, what about establishing feminist sport policy based in ethic of care? And when talking about ethic of care, it is about a situation where relations to others is achieved through perception of oneself connected to others. We are not separate, where the moral dilemmas are understood contextually, not universally, and where no one should be hurt is more important than winning the game or outperform another sport, and where the empathy, compassion, and responsibility are the meritocratic criteria we use when we recruit top leaders in sport. So how to realize ethics of care in sport? I think, and this is not an easy, it's more complex, of course, than it seems like when I'm talking about this, but I think the solution lies in top leaders' ability and willingness to question the logic that lies behind what they do in their everyday lives as top leaders. I think also that we need to question the values that has colonized sports organizations. And as I said, to give the ethic of care a voice. And the sports organization therefore needs to address what kinds of leaders do we recruit and what skill set do we look for. And to achieve that goal, many sports organizations have set themselves, as we have talked about, to be more equal, diverse, and sustainable. And then they should also recruit leaders that make this goal happening. And that are leaders who deeply care, who knows the concept servant leadership, and who dare to raise questions about the institutionalized masculine ruling logic that has colonized sports. I'm finished, actually. It wasn't 30 minutes, or it was?
It was less.
It was less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much. And then we would ask you to ask Hanne questions.
If there are, yeah.
Yeah. You can write them in the chat. I see we have 14 in the room, but I think that's the easiest way of doing it. I suppose it is a lot to digest. It's a lot of information, and it's also maybe not that easy to catch in 20 minutes if you are not familiar with some of these concepts. And I think this, Hanne, will fit very well into, it will fit better into some cultures than other cultures.
Yeah, of course.
That.
Yeah. We have different.
We had one. No, we didn't. Junko, do we have anyone? I see there is one in the chat, but I don't know if it's a question. I cannot open it.
Yes. Yes, one comment, but this is not question.
Okay. You know, can I ask you a question then when people are thinking? There is, I was wondering about, you know, when you, in relation to these power ruling things, that when you are setting, we need to they are undermining I just wrote down undermining the feminine. What did you mean by that? Can you operationalize that so that
the feminine
people, by undermining the feminine?
I think I have to go back and see where it was said. in this project, I contrasted this organizational kind of models, and it's not that clear cut, but on the one side you have organization managed and what you call it, ruled by a masculine ethic.
I understand that.
Yeah. And on the other side you have more an androgyne ethic. And I think when I'm talking about undermining the feminine, it's about not women as such, but values that many women, but also men are fond of, and that this contrasting is important to do to actually understand what we have to do with in kind of working with this changing the system.
Yeah, I think what is clearly from what we are saying is that people must not connect masculinity and femininity here to sex, to biological sex. That's I think that's like the core in your thesis also, you know, and so and of course that is sometimes difficult because it's so much connected to it, both masculine and feminine. But no, I think we have some more activities going on here. Can you go through that, Junko?
Yes, there are some questions by chat.
Yeah. And also Ruby hands.
Yes. So at first by Styliani Kroni, when you thanks Hane, when you said sports organization need to do address what kind of leaders we recruit. How do we change this? What steps can we take to get there?
Yeah, of course, that's it's a big question, and I think it will look different in different countries because we are organized differently. So in Norway, it's this committee that are recruiting top leaders or voluntary leaders into sports federation or into the Norwegian umbrella organization. So to kind of work with those who are in this position, I think is important. But also it's important, of course, to talk to those who are administrative leaders and to discuss with them how they are thinking actually about which people they are recruiting and what the goal are when they are recruiting people, also lower down in the organizations. But all in all, I think it's what is needed is also knowledge about what is happening, because that's difficult to see and understand when you're working in these organizations. You don't see all these things that maybe researchers see, and to meet and to talk, it's not that easy, but I think we researchers also need to be more out there, maybe to talk about what we find and what we are actually seeing.
Thank you. And the next one.
So next question is, what is your advice to talk about this situation in the sport organization leaders by males? What could be the first step to raise the voice?
I think, of course, it's important that we have these sessions and also meetings and that we are talking to each other. But it's also, as I said, to come out there. If or if not, that's often the problem. They are not interested. But in Norway, they have been kind of interested because of both of these theses, but also the problem in itself, because, as I said, there are a lot of pressure, kind of, have been, and it's also kind of this, it goes like this. It's not always, it is that the state is looking into these problems in sport, but sometimes, or back in time, there is people that are interesting in how this organization is ruled, actually. So I think we need also the pressure from outside, but also what we can do maybe is more going out, kind of talking about, and invite ourselves to and be a more part of what is happening in the in practice, in the everyday life of those who leads these organizations. But I see all the problems with that. It's not any easy task to get involved in a way.
We are talking about changing cultures here, and that people have tried to do that in many different areas for years. So it is very difficult. And I think it's more difficult the more it is connected to what you called the masculine ruling logic, because the barriers for changing will be, the stronger that logic is, the higher or the more difficult it will be. But actually there are a couple of publications, I think from around 1964 from US, about ethical care in sport. But it wasn't so connected to the organizations. It was more connected to, I think, the way one behave, also the different people in sport behave. But of course, this masculine ruling logic is a barrier in itself for change. I see there are even more. I couldn't get Junko to the. I couldn't open these questions before, but I can open them now. So I see there are some other comments. Do you want to read them, or shall I do it now that I can see them?
Yes, there are some questions. So next is by Enid Rodriguez. What is your advice to talk about this situation in the sports organization leaders? That's I read it. So next by Edith Mika. I'm working with women to deal with those kind of leaders. How can they challenge the system from within and uphold a good workspace dynamic at the same time?
How can they
challenge the system?
Challenge the system from within and uphold good workplace dynamic at the same time?
I don't think I understand the question actually, but is it
I think
about...
what is that as a starting point, that there is at the workplace there is a good dynamic, and how can you then challenge the system from within?
Yeah. It's difficult, of course, and it's difficult to say, to be the person that says something else or don't agree all the time. And it's but what I think it's, we have to find a combination of supporting those because in Norway, in Norwegian sport, there are a lot of people raising questions about how things are done. So I think again, it's maybe a little repetition here, but it's to get out there also with the knowledge that we have, and to discuss it, and being humble also, because this as I told, this organizational life for being a top leader is demanding. They don't have time also neither to discuss this. So in a way, we have to try to find someone, I think, that has power and that has are interested in changing, and we also need to confront them who works in the sports organization with, what are you actually doing? You say you want to have this, you want to have equality, you want to have diversity, you want to be sustainable, social sustainable, but what are you doing? And we have research on what they are doing. So it's not an easy answer. Again, it's as Kari said, this is something that we have been working for many years, and it's still not reached these goals. So yeah. Actually, in the thesis, actually in the thesis, I have one more thing that I point out that we can do, and that's more kind of action-oriented research. And it's difficult because then we need to have the sports organization with us, that we will be there, but also actually talk about gender and how we understand gender, and it's more working from inside of these organizations, and to give them, through this action-oriented research, give them the possibility to reflect and discuss. And it's a slow kind of way of changing, but maybe that's also a way to do it.
Hanne, I take the opportunity to ask you a question, because it's like implicit in some of these questions. There are more people, they are thanking you a lot for this, but I know that after you finish your thesis, you have presented it from 4 different kind of sports organizations, or people in different roles in sport. Could you say something about how, can you summarize for us the reaction to do this when you present these results?
Yeah. Mostly people are really positive and interested, and they say that they feel that they are have understood more of how things work. But of course, in the practice, there's still not that much happening, because what I'm talking about, and a lot of you also listening, I think, is something that go deeper, and it's more complex than doing this kind of fixing the women projects that a lot of sports organizations still do. So it's hard kind of to get them to work more in the deep. But in the Norwegian sports organization now, they are actually working with cultural problems, and the leaders are going to courses and so forth. But I think still they are not raising the question of what are the basis kind of they are working, yeah, what lies behind kind of, because everyone wants to have equality, everyone wants diversity, but still then not managed. So I think it's difficult to go deeper into this because it's difficult for people to see themselves in these systems and that they all kind of reproduce and doing this every day actually.
Would you agree if I say that this is actually not something particularly for sport? It concerns a lot of organizations and the way we organize society.
Absolutely. And therefore this is maybe too big, kind of, but I think that it would be interesting to go into other organizations too, to kind of try to discover or make visible what is happening here, and
doesn't it come down to capitalism
yeah.
that you already have there on the?
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe, but still, it's kind of many things that are connected, many logics that I think it's yeah.
Junko, I think we have time for one or two more. Which one do you want to pick for Hanne?
Yes. So the next question is by Minami Kawai. Thank you for Mrs. Hane for your presentation. I'm Minami Kawai, studying in Doshisha University from Japan, focusing on women's empowerment through sports. I'm very interested in today's topic because Japan's sports organization is still very dominated by men, and the percentage of women's leaders are left behind from many developed countries. Especially in Japan, I think this phenomenon can be seen in not only top organizations, but in university sport club as well, where the captain leaders are mostly men. So in order to change this vicious spiral, I believe there must be a change in the macro organization, but we also have to look into the micro sport organization to change the gender equality and equity in sports. So I would like to ask, some organizations such as World Triathlon is highly gender equal compared to others. What do you think is a major difference in the open acceptance of gender equity and equality compared to highly masculine and men gendered sport organization?
It's a big question, and I think it's not. Again, it's not easy to answer, but still, if I understood it right, every context that we go into, the Norwegian society or another society, of course, this is something that will look differently, because in Norway we have come a long way with equality in many ways, and it's a kind of it's nothing that the sports organization is confronting themselves. They have to kind of be more equal to have hva sier man, Kari? Legitimitet?
Legitimity, I think it's the word. Or to be accepted, you can also say.
To be accepted and to get all the money. I think in the future, if a Norwegian sport not are doing kind of or working on these issues, they are not have maybe in future long from now they don't will have the opportunity to get that lot of money that they get from the states, because they are lacking behind all other areas in the society. So kind of this pressure from outside, as I talked about, is of course also important. If not, it's really difficult to get the sport organization themselves to start to work. I think we have to kind of reach higher and confront also higher up in the system. but of course it's difficult in societies where you also have men at the top positions in the governments and all over.
I don't remember now, but in your thesis, this masculine ruling logic, which is like a very important part of it, or could you, in your interviews, could you see could you see it at different levels or different strengths? Also, is it possible to say that these sports organizations are more dominated by a masculine ruling logic than others, or is it stronger in some places than in others? Was that possible?
No, actually not, because I wasn't looking into the sports or the organization as such, but just talking to the leaders and how they were thinking and actually what they were doing every day. But there was the men that I interviewed was kind of, they were in the interviews also reflecting on how dependent they were to that the women are actually at home. And they said, many of them said that, of course, I couldn't do this work or be a part of sport, the sports organization at this level if I didn't have a wife at home doing all the other stuff. So they were reflecting on this, and they also were reflecting on if this is not changing, then it will be kind of impossible to recruit more women into the organization.
Mm. Yeah, Junko, I think we have 5 more minutes, so you can choose some of the
Yes,
others.
two questions, one question and one comment. So first, by Gro Askine Johnson, what we often have seen when working with this through She Skills Global is that for some reasons the information do not reach the women in the same way about the jobs, positions as the men. And when this is changing, the women apply and get involved, get the role. I was late, but did you say something about how women also need to be better in promoting other women for open jobs? And also, Guro comments. You have new regulation about reporting on sustainability goals. This include number 5, gender equality. This means larger companies need to report each year. This hopefully also will include the way they choose their sponsor object in the future.
That was a lot. The comment, yeah. The question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the men also, of course, need to stand by or work. Yeah, absolutely. This is maybe mostly about how they think when they recruit, but also about what values or what goals are they leading by. Because if it's actually doing as many say, that they are engaging in sport because of it's doing good, then it's to look into what kind of people do we need then to do more good, or to make this what we actually say that we want to make it to be. So it's yeah, it's everyone actually, and that's what I'm pointing out, that we are doing this logic or in an unconscious way. So it's yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but
this was not my question. It was lost in translation.
Okay, it was lost in
My
translation.
question was if this report, because I was late, also you included how women have to also be better in promoting other women for the open position, that we have to be more promoting of each other. That was my question.
Yeah.
She
Of
didn't
course.
touch upon that in her speech, actually.
No, but of course, but it's both. I think we need to support each other, of course, but still it's not that easy, kind of.
Okay, I think we have to close then.
Yeah.
I would like to say
Kari,
what
just-
I find really
Kari.
interesting with first of all, I want to thank all of you who participated, and I want, of course, especially to thank Hannes, but I think also in relation to the thesis and the development of new knowledge, what is really interesting here is the fact that she doesn't find any sex differences between women and men, and that female leaders who adopt this way of ruling are the same as the male leaders. And that also shows that you explained very clearly that it's very difficult to see it yourself. So therefore, it's maybe important to have scientists from outside here who can make this visible. Do you want to say anything at the end, Hannah?
No, actually not. Just thank you. It was really nice to take part and to have the chance to present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again,
Kari,
everyone.
Kari,
Yes.
may I just one comment by Rabi?
Yes,
She
yes, of
raised
course.
hands long time. I did a
Okay.
master's thesis on barriers to Southeast Asian women's rights in sport governance, and one of my findings is that global sport is fundamentally framed in Western norms imposed
Yes.
on non-Western nations.
Yeah.
Secularism contributes to the gender inequality in sport in countries where there is predominant religion. So
Yes.
that's a comment by Rabi.
Shall we try again to say goodbye and have a good night? What is in front of you, wherever you are in the world?
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Dr. Hane Sogun, for sharing your very interesting and valuable research and wonderful presentation. And thank you also, Kari. And thank you for everyone for joining us today.